all the element called
I've had such a good time training actors who are not improvisers in their heart to understand how much improvisation is involved in their craft. Even if you have a set language, in acting you're given staging, you're told what to do, when and where, sometimes down to the millisecond. It is far from improvisation. But if you begin to look at that as simply a score, and you start to see how much it's just about showing up. It's just showing up. That how do you be alive to the moment even though you know exactly what's going to happen when. To look at those as simply pretty tight banks to a river, but how the water flows is total improv. How are you today? What's the air like? How's your partner showing up? That cross that you do across stage, how's it going to feel today? There's a ton of improvisation in it. Even at Shakespeare and Company in Lenox, where I taught for about a decade, mainly what I was teaching there was authentic movement, which is a very meditative internal movement form. But that faculty that had a very developed approach to Shakespeare that they had worked on for over 20 years found out about authentic movement, were introduced to it, and they just immediately entered it into their training, their professional training programs there. Again, as a way to help actors understand that beautiful relationship between sensing, feeling, and action. That cycle that we're doing all day long. We sense something, we feel something, we take action, we sense, we feel. And that cycle, to become more conscious of that. And also and this is a hard one, this is not just for actors, it's for everybody, I think, is this really delicate balance between surrender and will that happens, I think, in all improvisation. And that concept of surrender is not an easy one, especially for Americans. It means giving up something, or surrendering to something, or giving up my will or my control, where in fact it speaks more about a kind of openness or receptivity. And so much of the work, the movement work that I teach, is less about moving and more about learning to allow yourself to be moved, genuinely. And that's profoundly different than moving. And when I teach acting, a more traditional acting class, it's less about imposing my great ideas on this text and my character, and more about speaking the text and seeing what happens as you speak these words. What happens in the moment? What discoveries do you make when you say these words in this rhythm? That really, to me, speaks to surrender, more than imposing my will and my great clever ideas onto something. And it particularly works in Shakespeare, and he said it, speak the speech, just speak the speech, and see what happens. And there's rhythms encoded in that speech that really work on you.
But there's people too that need to learn how to use their will, how to allow themselves to strongly do the things they want to do, to put it out there,
To me, that's less will and more about devotion. I'll never forget Ruth Zipporah. She has these advanced trainings, we were all there, and I just remember, I think she was fed up with us a little bit. She said, this is about devotion. You have to be devoted to this. And I really thought about that word and what it means. And I thought any discipline that anybody enters into requires that devotion. That's not will exactly. It's something else. It's passion, drive, love, curiosity. most of all, I think, that creates devotion. And that feels different to me than will. Will feels still a little, very much about, sort of tied to the ego a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a rough thing to have popping into improvisation of any kind. Because it's not about you. Never is, you know. And that's a hard thing for, especially for younger artists, to understand. Especially when it's body, it's there's not even an instrument. You are the instrument, the body, or your voice, or your ideas, or thoughts, or feelings. That it doesn't have anything to do with you. You know, that's a hard one.
What does it have to do with? It's not you.
Being open, it's that surrender thing. It's being open to something else.